I didn't even know what cybersecurity or even what computer science was 2 months before I started college, and now I've been a security engineer for over 5 years, and here's how I got there. Hi, I'm Jasmine, a cybersecurity engineer, specifically in product and application security, and also a content creator teaching cybersecurity. So going into college, I was actually on the pre-med track because I really wanted to become a pediatric cardiologist. That was my dream. I did a bunch of research and shadowing doctors all throughout high school and even during my freshman year of college. But I discovered what computer science and programming was the summer before my freshman year. There was a program held by Cornell Tech. It was this pilot program that was meant to introduce women to design thinking, computer science, coding. So that was my first real exposure to what coding even was. And I liked it so much that I actually decided to pursue a major in computer science while on the pre-med track. But after like 1.5 semesters of literally maxing out classes while I was in college, I decided that I was way too burnt out to do both computer science and pre-med, and ultimately decided to go with computer science. I think this was kind of a really hard decision because I'd been so set on becoming a doctor my entire life. But what really drove that decision was the fact that I felt like I could see the efforts of what I was building when coding. Whereas in chemistry or in biology, I just felt like I was memorizing things just for exams rather than actually understanding it. My two favorite computer science classes back then were actually networking and operating systems. I actually did so poorly in those classes, but they were still my favorite because I felt like I learned so much from them. And now you might be asking, like, what about cybersecurity? How did you get into that? I actually didn't even know what cybersecurity was maybe until my junior year. So I think during that year, there were so many hacks being reported in the news. And there were so many to the point where I got really curious, like, why was this happening? How are people doing it? And that's how I stumbled upon the world of what cybersecurity even was. I don't think I really understand what it was other than, oh, people are hacking things and there are people out there to prevent it. But my school didn't even have anything or courses for cybersecurity. We were very evergreen with even computer science. But I got my first exposure to cybersecurity during one of my internships. The one thing that really opened my door into the tech world were internships. Because I went to school in the city, it was a lot easier to get internships during the year. So my first ever internship I actually got through an alum of my college who had posted that they were looking for people interested in software engineering, and I applied and I got the role. It was good exposure and something to put on my resume. So I did 3 internships total during college, and my second one was actually at Verizon. I went to a Women in Verizon event, and I think everyone who attended were able to apply for the internship. Still had to go through the full interview process. And then my third and final internship is actually where I got to do cybersecurity. So this was at Capital One. I went in as a software engineering intern, but they had a cyber track, so I was able to work on the cyber team. And this was first introduction to cyber. I loved it so much. I think like the whole idea of protecting your data, not knowing where your data is going, and making sure your data is safe all steps of the way was super cool to me. And quite frankly, I would say during my internships, I did feel imposter syndrome because I felt like a lot of the other interns were from these big name schools. And I think when you're at a CUNY or non-big name school, you have to fight a lot harder. But also the fact that I was able to get an internship, I think showed that you don't have to go to a big name school in order to get an internship. So I knew I wanted to do something in cyber eventually, but like I said, because my school didn't have anything in cybersecurity, I still graduated with the software engineering degree. So my first job out of college wasn't even in cyber. I was actually doing front-end software engineering, and I did not like it. I very quickly realized that it just wasn't for me. I really wanted to go down the cyber route. So because that company offered tuition reimbursement, I applied for my master's at NYU, and I actually got into the program. So I did my master's in cybersecurity at NYU through the Cyber Fellows program. And the Cyber Fellows program gave you 75% off your tuition. And I did this part-time over the course of 4 years. I think if you do it full-time, you could probably do it in 2 years. The way that was structured was you would take core computer science classes again. So networking, operating systems, or even Python if you didn't didn't know it. Thankfully, I was able to place out some of those classes, but I did redo networking. And networking is definitely one of those things that keeps coming up again and again throughout the cyber career, even as an engineer. So definitely recommend taking that. I can do a separate video on like master's program specifically, but what I got out of that weren't really skills that I applied to my everyday job. It was still helpful, I think, for getting my foot in a door to a cyber job. And halfway through my cybers program, there was a position that actually opened up for security engineering. And they were specifically looking for a developer that was security minded. And so that really fell within my skills because since my background is in software engineering, and I applied and got the role and ultimately have been there. What helped me the most during the interview was showing how passionate I was about cyber, demonstrating and talking about projects that I did on the side. I also got a lot of side certificates like Google cybersecurity certificates or like using Splunk and all that, and even doing CTF competitions. So I think all of those activities and projects definitely help. So as a security engineer, technical skills that really matter are knowing how to code, obviously, knowing how to read code. Big one is being able to communicate with stakeholders, so especially developers. I'm in product security, application security now, and a lot of that is working directly with developers. I was also previously on identity and access management, and that was a lot more governance and policy and audit focused. Still required being very detail oriented, understanding the processes at your company, and also being able to talk to stakeholders. Besides communication, one thing that will definitely get you a long way is curiosity. You have to ask a lot of questions. You have to be really proactive and pretty much anticipate and understand at a high level, like at a business level, what is happening? Like, why are these things being implemented? How can we make these things easier for our stakeholders while also fulfilling requirements for ourselves? And one thing I will say, if you are trying to get into cybersecurity and that's just not your background, to not be afraid to pivot. I went from pre-med to software engineering to cybersecurity engineering, and now I even do content creation. It's really scary, but you don't know what will happen until you try it. And I would definitely focus more on projects and being proactive, documenting your projects online for people to see, having a presence on social media like LinkedIn. In this job market, that's what's going to set you apart from other people. And especially now with AI, cybersecurity is even more important. Cybersecurity is not going away with AI. AI, yes, will enhance our processes and make our manual processes more automated, but because AI exists, cybersecurity will always also exist as well. So if you have any questions about getting into cybersecurity careers, comment them below and I'll make sure I get to them.